This story was about famous warriors from different eras who were sent to another world. They were called drifters in this new world, and their mission was to fight the so-called Ends, which were on the other hand led by a black king. One of these drifters was the warrior named Shimazu Toyohisa. In the year 1600, Toyohisa and the Shimazu clan fought against the Eastern Army led by Namasa, who was the general of Tokugawa Ieyasu. Toyohisa defeated one of the armies of Namasa led by Masanori. Because of this, Namasa's entire army joined the battle against their opponent, forcing Toyohisa's army to retreat. While the Namasa's army chased after them, Toyohisa decided to stay behind with other Shimazu warriors to buy some time, so his uncle Yoshihiro could return back to Satsuma safely. Although Yoshihiro was against Toyohisa's plan, unfortunately, Toyohisa's companions were quickly killed by these soldiers. Toyohisa was also wounded, but he was able to shoot Namasa. The defeat of their leader caused its army to retreat. Even though Toyohisa was wounded, he continued walking just to get back to Satsuma. All of a sudden, he arrived in a place where all is white, and was surrounded by many doors. He saw a man reading a newspaper, named Murasaki. And out of confusion, he immediately asked him where he was. When Murasaki wrote Toyohisa's name on a piece of paper, Toyohisa was suddenly swallowed by a portal. He landed in another world, and his wounded body was found by the elf siblings, Mark and Marcia. When Toyohisa woke up and spoke, the brothers knew that he was a drifter. So they decided to take Toyohisa to the abandoned castle that they believed was inhabited by other drifters. When they arrived in that certain part of the forest, they were immediately spotted by a drifter, named Nasu Sukataka Yoichi. Both were nervous, but they told Yoichi that the man they found was also a drifter. They hurriedly left the area after that. Inside the abandoned castle, there was another drifter known as the Demon King of the Sixth Heaven, named Oda Nobunaga. When Toyohisa woke up, he immediately rushed to attack Nobunaga, thinking that he was an enemy. Then he noticed the symbol next to Nobunaga, so he asked him if he was a member of the Oda clan. After he introduced himself as Oda Nobunaga, Toyohisa attacked him again because he did not believe him. Toyohisa knew that Oda Nobunaga had been dead for a long time. He thought that this man was lying and an impostor. He was about to attack him again when Yoichi stopped their fight. While waiting for their dinner to be cooked, Toyohisa discussed how Nobunaga died. Toyohisa admitted that he and Nobunaga could not get along in the past years. Instead of taking this seriously, Yoichi just laughed at them. When Yoichi introduced himself to Toyohisa, he did not believe him too. He knew that it had been 400 years when the Genpei War happened, where Yoichi was known as one of the best warriors ever lived. Nobunaga also told him the story of the moments he found himself in the White Room before he landed in this place, which was similar to what happened to Toyohisa. So Nobunaga asked him what happened to his son, named Nobutada. Toyohisa answered that his son died while fighting. Like Nobunaga, Yoichi was also surprised when he learned from Nobunaga what had happened to each clan for 400 years. At a distance, the three of them were being watched by a woman named Olminu, who was a member of the organization called Octo Brist and has the codename, Simu. Using a crystal ball, she informed her Grand Master, named Abi no Haruakira, about the things she observed. Abi also talked to Kafedo, whose codename was Hama, about the two other drifters that they were also monitoring. These were Hannibal Carba and Scipio Africanus. Because these two drifters were fighting, Abi ordered Hama to stop their fight and separate them. Meanwhile, when Mark and Marcia returned to their house, their older brother Shara immediately scolded them upon learning what they did. The army of the Orte Empire led by Aram found out about it too. Toyohisa suddenly woke up when they felt something happening outside. They saw the smoke from a distance. Nobunaga said that it was from the village of elves that might be attacked by bandits. When Toyohisa learned from Nobunaga that those who helped him were elves, he immediately ran to this village. Nobunaga and Yoichi decided to follow Toyohisa, which surprised Olminu. They met Mark and Marcia, who were being chased by Aram's soldiers. Nobunaga shot and killed one of these soldiers, and Toyohisa attacked the others too. Based on what the soldiers were wearing, Nobunaga knew that these were not bandits and that they were possibly soldiers of a leader of the Orte Empire. It was mentioned that they were going to take over the village of the elves, so Abi realized that it was the drifters' natural tendency to take over a territory. While Aram's soldiers were burning the houses, he also ordered to gather the elves outside. He said that it was a crime for the elves or demi-humans to interfere with drifters. He added that one day, the clan of demi-humans would disappear. Then he suddenly stabbed the leader of the elves, which terrified the others. This signaled the other soldiers to start stabbing and killing the other elves one by one. Suddenly, a soldier came and informed Aram about the burning of the wheat crops. The fire spread quickly, which turned out caused by Nobunaga. Toyohisa came rushing at them and killed the soldiers one by one until Aram was the only one left. When Toyohisa saw the dead bodies of elves which done by Aram and its soldiers, he got angry. Shara told Toyohisa that Aram was not a kind of warrior that easily defeated, and drifters might not defeat him. So Toyohisa threw his sword at Aram, which was easily blocked by its sword. But he was surprised that Toyohisa was already right in front of him. Toyohisa knocked Aram down and using the sheath of his sword, he repeatedly hit it to Aram's head. While Nobunaga was watching, Yoichi suddenly arrived, who had just finished killing the soldiers who were planning to run away. They both witnessed how Toyohisa defeated its opponent and realized that he was also a scary creature. When Toyohisa knocked Aram unconscious, he approached one of the elves and ordered him to kill Aram. Toyohisa added that this was their chance to avenge those elves killed by Aram and its soldiers. Even though the elves did not understand what Toyohisa was saying, they knew what he was conveying to them. Then they simultaneously stabbed and killed him. Olminu could not believe what Toyohisa and the other drifters did. Meanwhile, Murasaki immediately read what Toyohisa and the others did in the village of elves. Easy came that caused the surrounding to turn dark. She was responsible for the existence of the ends, and she was also Murasaki's rival. She told him that even if Murasaki sent a few more drifters, they would not win against her ends. Murasaki replied that he would not let her do whatever she wants. So Easy showed to Murasaki in the newspaper the beginning of the Black King's attack. Olminu intended to take Toyohisa to their hideout, but Abi opposed it because the Black King begun to order its army to attack them. While they were worried about the approaching army of the Black King, the Carniadis warriors were confident that the enemies would not be able to pass their wall. These soldiers were just laughing, so Abi thought that these people were worthless and would not even last long in the battle. Abi decided to go to Kafeto and find out the situation of the two drifters he was guarding. He hoped that they would be able to lead the Carniadis army to save the country. They tried to convince the Carniadis high officials to transfer the leadership of the Carniadis army to Hannibal and Scipio. But the high officials did not agree because these drifters were elderly. This angered Scipio, and while they were arguing, Hannibal could not stop himself from urinating. Because of this, the Carniadis soldiers laughed at him. Scipio had enough and got angry. He told them that even if they were millions in number they could not defeat Hannibal. He added that even the Roman Empire, which was not afraid of millions of enemies, trembled to face Hannibal alone. Abi suddenly spoke and informed them of his decision to leave the place. He made it clear that he would take the drifters with them. They talked to Olminu, but he suddenly disconnected from the conversation, so they thought that the Black King's army was near. It was here that the guards on the wall had a glimpse on the approaching enemies. The Black King had already given his army an order to attack. The Black King's warriors named Hijikata, Joan of Arc and Anastasia were also given the permission to attack their enemies. Yoshitsune was also there, but he did not know yet if he would side with the Ends or to the drifters. With the help of the dragons, the Black King's army was able to enter the walls of Carniadis. A warplane appeared in the sky and another drifter was on board, named Kano Naoshi. He was wondering about what was happening and he was shocked when he saw the dragons flying around him. Hijikata quickly destroyed the door and using his power they killed those soldiers guarding it. Using the power of Joan of Arc, it also destroyed another door and eliminated the soldiers there. While Anastasia started attacking those Carniadis' soldiers she met on her way. As now she saw the dragons' relentless attack on the citizens of Carniadis, he remembered the war in their country. Because of what he witnessed, he got angry. Meanwhile, the two other drifters, named Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, were waiting for Abi and the others. When they arrived, Abi asked the drifters if there was any hope of defeating the Black King. Scipio honestly answered that he was not sure about this, but for Hannibal, there was no zero chance of winning. Abi was encouraged by Hannibal's words and thought that they would have a better chance of winning if Toyohisa and its group were with them. After this, they left the area. Butch and Kid killed those enemies who were blocking them on the road. They noticed someone above who was attacking the dragons one by one, so Abi confirmed that it was also a drifter. A few minutes later, the Black King also successfully conquered the Carniadis territory. While Olminu continued to observe, she was suddenly surprised by the group of Nobunaga. Toyohisa informed her that they already knew that they were being watched by her. Because of Olminu's fear, she immediately introduced herself and told the purpose of their organization. They brought Olminu to the abandoned castle and there she continued to explain the details about the Octo-Brist organization, the Drifters and the Ends. Nobunaga interrupted that the Octo-Brist must had made a mistake to say that as a drifter, he was in the good side. But she made sure that the three of them did not belong to the Ends because the Ends wanted nothing more than to end the existence of the humans in this world. Olminu also mentioned that they only asked for the support of the kings and feudal lords when it comes to the armed forces and this was what they wanted the drifters to lead. But Nobunaga wanted was to hold and be in control of the entire empire. And he chose Toyohisa to lead them. While Toyohisa did not know that from the moment he sat in the chair prepared by Nobunaga, this was the beginning of his leadership over them. The Black King ordered Rasputin to tell everyone about their success in the destruction of the northern walls. He revealed to him that he had planned to save humanity but was rejected by them. Because of this, he decided that he would only save the demi-humans and end the existence of humanity. He ordered Rasputin to find the drifters who escaped from the war. He also reminded them that they should not allow the drifters to be together, because this was the only threat he knew that would interfere with their plans. So they need to find and kill the drifters immediately. On the other hand, now she landed in the forest after the plane he was using malfunctioned. While the elves were talking about the current situation and their next plan, Yoichi suddenly appeared. In order for them to communicate properly, Olminu gave Toyohisa and other drifters special papers so they could understand the elves. Toyohisa approached the elves to make them choose whether they would fight for their rights and dreams or remain as a shame of their ancestors and of the next generation. The elves were moved by his words and chose to fight for their freedom. So Toyohisa also decided and promised to give his support and put them back to the place that belonged to them. Because of what he did, Nobunaga remembered someone that has the same spirit as Toyohisa. Shara interrupted and said that the Orte army was sure to be coming. The enemies might come the day after tomorrow. Olminu told them the story of the invasion done by the kingdom of Orte in the land of elves, dwarves and hobbits, that they became slaves and others were made as minors. Because of this, the Orte proclaimed that they were now an empire and created a new system. Meanwhile, the army sent by Orte to the village of the elves was consisted of 200 soldiers. When they arrived there, they found no elves and even the bodies of the soldiers who were killed were gone too. Their army leader was surprised and wondering how it happened, but they had no idea that Toyohisa and the others were waiting their chance to attack them. Before the arrival of the Orte army, they gathered the weapons and armor of those they had killed so that they could use them as well. Since these weapons were not enough, they decided to make bows and arrows. Toyohisa ordered to bury the heads of those they killed while their bodies were dumped in the pit. They included the soil they took from the restroom and planned to mix it with charcoal and sulfur as well. While Olminu watched, she did not understand what they were planning to do. The elves also underwent training in the use of bows since their race were known as good archers, they learned easily. Yoichi showed his skill and elegance as he repeatedly hit the target with the arrows one after the other. Before their scheduled attack, Toyohisa met with the elves and asked them some informations. Then they learned the reason why there were no female elves left in their village. They told Toyohisa that an Orte leader and his men took them to its castle. So Toyohisa planned and informed them that after they killed the army sent by Orte, they would attack Orte's castle where the female elves were taken. Nobunaga was convinced that Toyohisa was truly born as a warrior and had the skills needed to be a warlord. At night, Toyohisa started to attack the soldiers on guard. The elves also shot their arrows on the other soldiers. Nobunaga led the other elves, and they built a barricade when they got close to the village. They dipped the arrow heads on the soil mixture that they prepared and shot the enemies with them. The soldiers noticed the liquid from the arrows. Then they realized that the entire village had not been completely abandoned and it was just part of their enemy's strategy to ambush them. The drifters and the elves quickly killed most of the enemies. Toyohisa searched and started to attack the leader of the enemies and he easily killed him. Out of fear, the remaining soldiers ran for their lives. While the escapees were already in the forest, the rest of them fell into the traps that was prepared for them. By Yoichi's command, the elves shot them with arrows and finish off the remaining soldiers. Meanwhile, the head of the castle was already worried because the soldiers he sent had not yet returned. Suddenly, one of their soldiers came to inform him that the soldiers he sent were already at the gates. They had no idea that these group were the drifters and the elves who disguised themselves by wearing the armor of the enemies they killed. They were immediately given the permission to enter the castle. And when the leader approached them, Toyohisa and the others exposed themselves. The leader was shocked and in his fear he immediately pointed the tower where the female elves were taken. So Toyohisa rushed to save them and killed the soldiers guarding on his way. While the others searched and took other documents and maps from the leader's room here. Olminu came and was surprised that Toyohisa's group had finally conquered the whole castle. Nobunaga noticed the large picture displayed on the wall. Olminu told him that the man on the portrait was the founder of the Orte Empire. It was 60 years ago when this person suddenly appeared and they were also wondering if it was a drifter or an end. But after establishing the Orte, this person committed suicide and until now the reason for its suicide had not been determined. Suddenly another elf came to inform Nobunaga that Toyohisa was now with the soldiers that they had gathered outside and was thinking on how to kill them. Nobunaga immediately went to Toyohisa because he wanted to be the one to do such things. The soldiers they gathered were terrified and begged Toyohisa not to kill them. Shara and the other elves wanted to kill these soldiers and was just waiting for Toyohisa to give them permission. Before Toyohisa could speak, Nobunaga suddenly attacked him from behind and he immediately lost consciousness. It was Nobunaga who gave permission to the elves to kill the soldiers. When Toyohisa woke up, the soldiers were all dead and lying down on the ground. While Nobunaga was still talking about his experience in the past on how many times he did this kind of execution, Toyohisa suddenly punched him. He told him that he did not care how many times Nobunaga had done this before. Then Yoichi approached the only living member of the opponents that they gathering. This man repeatedly said that he did not do anything bad to the female elves, so Shara and the others took pity on him. When the female elves returned to their village, they also brought what Nobunaga had given them. What was written there touches the heart of the reader but manipulates its mind. This was the reason why the other villages of the elves started to revolt against their oppressors. Izi saw the news about what Toyohisa did to free the elves. This news also reached Saint Germain, a count of Orte. While the other officials of the Orte were having their meeting, Saint Germain suddenly came with his 2 followers. He was the first noble who was with the founder of Orte when it was established. He also owned a large part of the Orte, that's why no one tried to oppose him on things he decided to do. They discussed the invasion on their army in the ocean and the revolt of the elves in their other territories. The other officials were complacent that they could stop these elves. But in Germain's mind, there was no hope for these people because they could not see the possible things to happen which might be the cause for the collapse of the empire. Because of this, he left immediately and decided to talk to the elves as well as the drifters. The elves from the village of Fazona who received a letter from Shara had arrived in their village. They still doubt that the drifters could be trusted, but according to Shara, he had complete trust in them. They had started another process in making the black powder. Shara approached Nobunaga to say that their blacksmiths were unable to copy Nobunaga's gun. But he was sure that the dwarves can do it because they were good at forging weapons. While Yoichi was training the other elves in archery, Toyohisa was trying to train the others in swordsmanship. At night, while talking about the training with the elves, they felt that someone was coming who according to Toyohisa was different from the army of Orte. It turned out to be the member of the End, named Joan and Gilles. Their mission was to kill Toyohisa and other drifters. When they got there, they attacked the other elves and Joan burned their houses. Toyohisa appeared to face the opponents. They started evacuating the children and female elves, while Nobunaga ordered the men to gather the arrows and prepare to attack. Yoichi faced Gilles who immediately attacked him. Joan also started to attack Toyohisa and she surrounded him with her fire. After another attack, Olminu came to block the fire with her stone wall. With Joen's continuous attacks, Toyohisa picked up Olminu and they retreated. Olminu told him that she could build a stone wall using the talisman and she only had 2 left. Toyohisa noticed that Joan was not a skilled fighter yet. It made him felt confident that he could defeat her. Then he thought of a way how they could use Olminu's remaining stone wall. On the other hand, Yoichi and Gillis's skills were almost inseparable. At that moment, Yushitsune, Yoichi's former colleague in the Genpei War, watched while they were fighting. Even though Yoichi hit Gilles with his arrow multiple times, he was surprised that Gilles still did not die. By Nobunaga's leadership, the other elves ambushed the opponents who were chasing after the escaping elves. Because of Nobunaga's strategy, they quickly finish off the opponents. Joen continued to release fire in the surrounding while looking for Toyohisa. When Toyohisa and Olminu showed up, she immediately surrounded them with her fire. Suddenly, Olminu used the stone wall and Toyohisa used it to speed up his attack on Joen. With the strong force of Toyohisa's attack, Joen fell into the well. Then Joen remembered what was done to her in her past life and the first time she met Izzy. After Toyohisa found out that Joen was a woman, he lost interest in killing her. He told her that women should not be in battle. He added that she should go back home and behave like a woman. He also hit Joen on the wall, causing her to lose consciousness. Yoichi still could not kill Gilles, and when its chain caught him, Nobunaga sent the elves to help Yoichi and attack Gilles. Abi came with others and Kid attacked Gilles by a machine gun that shattered its body. Meanwhile, 2 goblins who's riding a dragon took Joen's body away. When Gilles saw that Joen was safe, he accepted his defeat and released his last breath. While Yoichi was still panting from the fight he and Gilles had, he suddenly heard Yushitsune's voice. Yushitsune reminded him of what he did during the height of the Genpei War. Yoichi shouted that he would never follow Yushitsune's orders again. Nobunaga spoke to Abi to ask who they were. When Abi introduced himself, Nobunaga immediately remembered Abi no Seimei. Toyohisa also came when Abi told them that he saw Murasaki in the White Room and made him a drifter. He immediately realized his mission in this world and it was to defeat the Ends. Then they remembered Joan as they were having the conversation. Toyohisa told them that he left her unconscious in the well after he defeated her in their fight. They immediately went to the well and found that Joan was no longer there. Abi was angry because Toyohisa did not took the opportunity to kill Joan. But Toyohisa did not care about what he said because he could not kill a woman. He added that he would do whatever he wanted to do. Abi had no choice but to stop arguing about it because their priority was to beat the Ends. Then Olminu asked who's the old man that was with them. Abi told the story about Hannibal and the other drifter, Scipio, who was left behind while they were escaping away from their pursuers. They could not stop to help Scipio during that time. So the headquarters sent an octo-brist to look for him, but they still could not find him. Since Scipio was separated from them, it had a great effect on Hannibal. Meanwhile, Scipio wandered around the forest and in the distance he saw Naoshi's plain. Naoshi turned the dogmen who lived there into his followers and he was nicknamed the Sky God. After his observation on the weapon, Nobunaga asked Kid what type of bullet was used in his Gatling gun. Nobunaga was amazed by it and wanted to use it too. Abi said that they had done research on this and they had talked to the blacksmiths, but it was impossible to imitate this kind of weapon and the black powder for the bullet. But they were surprised when Nobunaga said that he was currently making the black powder. At that moment, the member of the octo-brist arrived in a carriage carrying the sulfur that Nobunaga requested from Olminu. So Abi asked Nobunaga on what they would do next after they made black powder. Nobunaga replied that they would rescue the dwarves and other tribes conquered by the Orte. He added that they would also form an alliance with other tribes that were fighting against the Orte Empire. And make many weapons to finally conquer the entire Orte Empire. They will unite the different tribes and establish a federation among them. Then Toyohisa would lead their entire army. Abi asked him why Toyohisa was chosen as the leader and not him. Nobunaga simply replies that he was not worthy because of what he did in his past life and he sees in Toyohisa all the qualities to lead them. While Hannibal was alone, Toyohisa approached him and wanted to confirm something. He rushed at Hannibal and was surprised by how quickly the old man reacted on his action. and he was satisfied at what he witnessed from the old man. When Olminu arrived, Toyohisa told her not to leave Hannibal alone because he had the same eyes as his uncle. At night, Toyohisa made an announcement to the elves which surprised them because he told them that they would save the dwarves. Due to the negative reaction from the elves, Shera told Toyohisa that there was a conflict between the elves and dwarves. When they were conquered by the Orte, the dwarves did not even help them. But Toyohisa just told them that he only needs true warriors and those who did not want to join were not being forced to help. Shera and the other villagers decided that they would go with him because they owe him their life when Toyohisa saved them. Abby also decided that they would go back to headquarters with Butch and Kid to look for Scipio. He left Olminu and Hannibal in Toyohisa's care because he knew that they could help him. Suddenly the elves came to him and were ready to join in Toyohisa's mission to save the dwarves. Meanwhile, Jeremy started traveling to the village of elves because he knew that they and the drifters would attack the Godolka next, to free the dwarves. While in Godolka, Toyohisa and his companions started their attacks. Using the black powder they made, they blew up everything outside the castle. When the soldiers were still in panic, Toyohisa took advantage of this and rushed forward to attack. While the group of Yoichi targeted the watchers in the towers using their bow and arrows. After they defeated those soldiers outside the walls, the castle suddenly lowered the gate's door. And Orte's armored guard's corpse warrior came out of it. Toyohisa told the elves to go back and Olminu used his stone walls to trap these soldiers inside. Then they threw the explosives inside the walls that killed these soldiers immediately. The castle's gate was immediately closed before Toyohisa's group could enter. Then Nobunaga thought of a way to get Toyohisa inside. He talked to Olminu using the crystal ball. Using the bow, they stuck Olminu's charms to the wall, and these made ladders that they could use to go over the walls. They immediately entered and after eliminating the guarding soldiers, another gate was quickly closed to avoid them from entering. Shera suggested that it would be better if they could free the dwarves first because they could be a help to them. Since their childhood it had been known that the dwarves were also extraordinary warriors. When they found them in a prison, they saw how pitiful these dwarves were in their condition. They were so hungry, so Toyohisa decided to cook food for them and let them eat first. Then he tried to encourage the remaining soldiers inside the castle and their leader to surrender. Thinking that they would not be killed, the head of the castle decided to surrender to them. When they opened the gate, Toyohisa asked who was the head of the castle. The man in front introduced himself as the leader of the army. The leader was shocked to know that Toyohisa would order him to end his own life as the leader of the defeated army. The leader did not agree to this so Toyohisa got pissed and killed him. The other soldiers ran for their lives and away from the castle to escape. Toyohisa told Yoichi that they did not need to chase them anymore. The other members of the Octo Brist were on the north wall and were spying on the Black King's actions. They saw one of the 6 great dragons, called the Bronze Dragon. They were also surprised to see the monsters who were farming the lands. They remembered what Abby said that the Black King is different from all the Ents. It is said that the Black King does not want to destroy the world but to save it. Along with Hijikata and Rasputin, the Black King encouraged the Bronze Dragon to join his army. The Bronze Dragon did not agree to this, so the Black King used his power to gradually melt its skin. The Bronze Dragon felt so much pain that it was forced to agree to the Black King's offer. Hijikata and Rasputin were amazed at the power of the Black King who can also imitate other things, even the food. When Joan woke up, Anastasia immediately told her what happened and how she went to the northern wall of Carniadis. Anastasia also mentioned Giliz's death that angered Joan. She tried to get up to go back to Toyohisa because she wanted to take revenge on Giliz's death. But Anastasia did not allow her. Instead, she was told to wait for the right opportunity. After leaving the room, Rasputin spoke to Anastasia. They talked about Toyohisa and based on what he did to Joan, they knew they should not underestimate the drifter's skills. When the Bronze Dragon joined the army of the Black King, his skin was used to make weapons. When Jeremy arrived at the village of the elves, he was greeted by the man who managed to survive when the castle of Orte was attacked by the group of Toyohisa. It was only then that Jeremy found out that Toyohisa and other drifters were currently in Godolka. Talking to their new allies, Nobunaga had shown to the dwarves the musket he wanted them to imitate. The dwarves asked him why they insisted on firing the musket, Went for them, the arrow was still better since it was not noisy. Nobunaga could not think of an answer, so Toyohisa replied that the noise from the musket resembled a shout during the height of the battle. He added that it was easy to learn and to use. The dwarves decided to start making muskets. Nobunaga was surprised that they were able to make it in just one day. The dwarves assured him that they could make 10 muskets a day. Toyohisa also took with him the other dwarves who had the potential to become warriors. While on training, Jermi's 2 henchmen suddenly came and they planned to test how strong Toyohisa was. Jermi went to face Nobunaga and the others. Jermi said that he was also a drifter. They also learned from Jermi that the founder of Orte, named Adolf, was also a drifter. Nobunaga realized that Jermi seemed to know them all and everything about them. Jermi wanted to confirm if they were eligible to be his allies. So his men began to attack Toyohisa. And Jermi mentioned that Toyohisa was currently being tested by his subordinates. But he was surprised when his men came back and were already beaten by Toyohisa. Then Jermi told his plan that he would help Toyohisa conquer the Orte Empire. He explained the plan he thought of how they could quickly conquer Orte from the inside. After Jermi introduced himself to Toyohisa, he remembered the battle at Sekigahara in 1600. Even Yoichi was surprised that Jermi also knew the period of war he was known, same as with Nobunaga. Because of this, they immediately realized that Jermi was from a future which period was far away from theirs. Jermi asked Toyohisa if he still wanted to know what happened to the Shimazu clan after the Battle of Sekigahara. But Toyohisa answered that he already knew what happened. If his uncle had successfully returned to Satsuma, he was sure that their clan had defeated the Tokugawa clan. Jermi was surprised that Toyohisa was able to guess the fate of his clan just because of his uncle's retreat. When Toyohisa agreed to Jermi's plan, they immediately headed to Verlina, the capital of Orte. Because of Saint Jermi's connections through his name and the help he sent, Toyohisa and others were able to enter Verlina right away. Jermi called a meeting with the high officials of Orte. Then he announced that he was going to end the Orte Empire, which surprised the other officials. Jermi added that something new will be established and it will be led by the drifter Toyohisa. An officer immediately called for the soldiers to arrest Jermi, but he did not know that the group of Toyohisa had killed the soldiers inside the building. At that moment, other officials also announced their support for Jermi, who were also new about the plan. After 2 more officers agreed to the announcement, Jermi was surprised that they objected to give the leadership to the drifter and suggested that the Black King should rule instead. It turned out that this person was controlled by Rasputin. In just a few seconds, Toyohisa and his men reached the room and the goblins tried to stop them, but Toyohisa immediately killed them all. Rasputin was surprised and Toyohisa approached the officer who was being controlled by Rasputin. He kicked its face repeatedly for not agreeing on his leadership. Rasputin could not smile anymore because they already knew he was there. Nobunaga even teased him, that made him feel enraged. Rasputin immediately informed Hijikata about the situation in Verlina. The Black King also knew this, so he ordered them to destroy this place instead of conquering it. Knowing the threat and in response to it, Nobunaga had the Verlina map taken to prepare for the upcoming battle. They only have 200 elves and 200 dwarves. Then Jermi mentioned that his army of 500 people was coming to aid them at any time. When this army arrived, they were immediately recognized by Hannibal Carba. Jermi was surprised and only then did he know that this old man was Hannibal Carba. Jermi's army was given the muskets made by the dwarves and Nobunaga was assigned to lead them. While Toyohisa would lead the dwarves, and Yoichi would lead the elves. Nobunaga and Toyohisa knew that the Black King would change his plan after he found out that the drifters were already inside the Verlina. Olmi knew communicate with them using the crystal balls. When the Black King's army arrived, the musketeers immediately shot them. Nobunaga also gave the signal to Yoichi and the elves to attack so they could give the musketeers time to reload for their next attack. After the second attack of the musketeers, Toyohisa and the dwarves rushed towards the enemies. Not far away from the battle, Hijikata, who has a grudge against the Shimazu clan, watched the fight. While Toyohisa's army was fighting the enemies, Nobunaga ordered Yoichi's army to attack the rear enemy forces. Hijikata ordered his army in front to retreat. He told those at the back to form small groups and then disperse. After the retreat of Hijikata's army, Nobunaga immediately sensed that something bad was about to happen. Yoichi noticed sudden change of tactic from the enemy, so he informed Nobunaga. Because of this, Nobunaga realized that the leader of the opponents knew something about guns. Hijikata faced Toyohisa and they both introduced themselves to each other. He informed Toyohisa that his identity as one of the Shimazus was enough reason for him to end his life. Toyohisa could not recognize Hijikata and thought that maybe he was after a different generation of Shimazu. Nobunaga asked Yoichi to watch from above and describe what the enemies were doing. After Yoichi described the movements of the opponents, Nobunaga devised new strategy for them to prepare. He immediately told everyone who's inside the building to get out. He also asked Olminu to bring him the map of Verlina. Toyohisa and Hijikata started their fight. Using Hijikata's power, he created shadows of samurais to fight against Toyohisa. Through a nearby building, Toyohisa was able to get close to Hijikata and they fought with their swords. Because Toyohisa kept on teasing on Hijikata's style of fighting, his opponent became even more angry at him. Nobunaga knew that Hijikata was falling into the trap of Toyohisa. So he thought of a way to counter the opponent's attacks. As Toyohisa and Hijikata continued in exchanging swings of their swords, Toyohisa's sword broke. Hijikata used his power and attacked Toyohisa, causing him to get injuries. Meanwhile, when the enemies arrived, they were surprised because they did not see anyone inside the buildings. Nobunaga's men blow up every army of enemies entering the building. Using Olminu's stone wall, the enemies were unable to get out from there too. They could not escape even through the windows because the musketeers were also waiting to shoot them. Hijikata was stunned as he watched what was happening to his army. Toyohisa told Hijikata the strategy he made to give Nobunaga time to prepare a counter-attack. He believed in its ability to change the result of any situation that did not suit them. Because of this, Hijikata was even angry because Toyohisa deceived him. He tried to use his power again, but the dwarves helped, so he was not able to attack Toyohisa. He was surprised when Toyohisa came close to him and they exchanged blows on each other. The Black King suddenly spoke to him to retreat, but Hijikata refused to back down yet. Toyohisa suddenly attacked him once again and the two continued to fight. The Black King gave the order to Hijikata again to go back, so he had no other choice but to retreat and go with the dragon. After Hijikata left, Toyohisa lost consciousness. As the opponent retreated, the Verlina was finally conquered by the drifters and their men. I hope you like it and give it a thumbs up. Thank you for watching.